What's up guys, in today's video we are going to be reviewing Hoka's Mach 5 with Nike's Pegasus 39. Now these are two daily trainers around the same price and I got them at the same time. So it just makes sense that I put them head to head and see which shoe I like better. But as we've already mentioned price, let's dig into that first. The Hoka Mach 5 rings in at $140, whereas the Nike Pegasus 39 is only $130. Now this difference would have been even bigger last year, because last year the Pegasus 38 was $120, but Nike has added $10 to the Pegasus this year, and it's still $10 less than the Hoka Mach 5. So for price, the Nike Pegasus is going to take it. Now even though these are two daily trainers, they are pretty different from one another. The Nike Pegasus 39 has a 10mm drop, the Hoka Mach 5 has a 5mm drop. In a men's US size 9, the Hoka Mach 5 weighs in at 8.2 ounces or 232 grams. And for the Pegasus 39, a US men's size 9 weighs in at 9.4 ounces or 266 grams. So in the sample size, the Hoka Mach 5 weighs 34 grams less than the Pegasus 39. However, I don't wear a US men's size 9. In the Hoka, I wear a US men's size 12.5. In the Nike Pegasus, I wear a US men's size 13. And in my size, the Hoka Mach 5 increases its weight to 9.2 ounces or 261 grams. In my size 13, in the Pegasus 39, it tips the scale at 11.2 ounces or 317 grams. So once the size goes up, so does the difference. There is a 56 gram difference between my size Hoka Mach 5 and my size Pegasus 39. And I gotta say, it is noticeably different. It's noticeably different on foot, and it's noticeably different me sitting here holding both shoes. The Mach 5 just feels very light in comparison. Okay, for those of you that haven't fallen asleep already, you've probably heard me say that I wear a US men's size 12.5 in the Hoka Mach 5 and a US men's size 13 in the Nike Pegasus 39. Across the board in Hoka's, I do have to drop half a size and I wear a 12.5. So in my experience, the Nike Pegasus 39 is true to size and the Hoka Mach 5 runs a little small. Or does it run a little big? Yeah, it runs a little big. I have to go down a size, so yes, it runs big. But I've got to say the 12.5 fits me very well, except for one thing. I want you guys to look at the front of both of these shoes. You see how close the laces are together on the Hoka Mach 5 and how they're kind of a little more far apart on the Pegasus 39. Now in order to get an equal lockdown across both of these shoes, I have to pull the eyelet chains a lot closer together on the Hoka Mach 5 than I do on the Pegasus 39. Now really that means nothing other than aesthetically speaking. I think the right distance between the eyelet chain is totally debatable, but I do prefer how the Nike Pegasus 39 looks when it's on my foot. I found the Hoka Mach 5 might have just a little bit more volume in the foot, and that's why I have to cinch the laces down a little more, but other than appearances, that's all there is to it. So hold on, let me back up and tell you who won the weight round, even though it's pretty obvious. The Hoka Mach 5 wins the weight round. And if we were going to say sizing wins a round, then I'd say Nike wins that round. Now if you look at the heel collar on both the Hoka Mach 5 and the Pegasus 39, you're going to see they do look pretty similar. I'd say there is equal padding on the heel collars of each. Maybe there's a little more on the Pegasus 39, but regardless, my heel, when surrounded by the heel collar, was 100% comfortable. And as far as the heel counter goes, the Hoka Mach 5 is a little stiffer than that of the Nike Pegasus 39. I can just squeeze a little more on the Pegasus. And if we look at the heel flare on both of these shoes, we can see that they're pretty equal. Now Hoka has had a higher heel flare for a long time, but the Pegasus 39 has made that one of its features for this model year. And again, for me, that is only aesthetic purposes. I think it looks pretty good, and I haven't experienced any heel slip. The heel collar, the heel counter, they don't bother me at all in both of these shoes. Now we've already spoken about the eyelet chain, but the eyelet chain on the Hoka Mach 5 is pretty standard. We have a little bit of overlay reinforcement right over the eyelet holes, but really there's nothing else supporting the eyelet chain. On the Nike Pegasus 39, however, they've gone back to the flywire system, and that is connected to a midfoot band which just helps support the midfoot when the laces are cinched down. Now I think the flywire system is actually pretty good. I really do get a good fit on the Nike Pegasus 39. However, when I compare it to the Hoka Mach 5, it strikes me as being a little over-engineered. It's like there's a little too much going on there. Because while it does fit my foot well, and it feels good when the laces are cinched down and I'm running, the Hoka Mach 5 also feels good, and it doesn't have all that nonsense with flywire and a midfoot band. So in the name of weight savings, I do prefer the Hoka Mach 5. The Mach 5 does feature a Creel Jacquard engineered mesh, and it's a single layer, and it feels pretty durable. It doesn't feel like the type of mesh that you get on racing shoes, where it's transparent enough where you can see your hand if you put your hand on one side of it, and it doesn't feel like it's something that's going to wear down ridiculously quickly. The Nike Pegasus 39 also has a breathable mesh upper, but it is a dual layer. And we do have a kind of a translucent engineered mesh on top, and then there is something a little more opaque underneath. And of course, when you have two layers, it's going to be a little more resilient, it's going to stand up to time, but that dual layer mesh also adds to the weight. So I guess you have to ask yourself how long you want to keep your shoes for. And if you regularly break through the upper, maybe your big toe breaks through the upper, it is less likely to do so on the Pegasus 39 than the Mach 5. However, I think the mesh on the Mark V is actually pretty thick. And for me, I don't foresee that happening. Let's get down to the midsole, because really that is where the magic happens when we're talking about running shoes. Like last year, the Nike Pegasus 39 is featuring React foam, and it's a pretty good foam. It's fairly light, it's fairly responsive. But the Nike Pegasus 39 also packs in 2 air zoom units. This year we've got 1 air zoom unit here in the forefoot and another one in the heel. And I know that the Pegasus 39 outweighs the HOKA Mark V by quite a bit this year, but the weight of the Pegasus 39 has actually come down over last year's Pegasus 38. So they're doing something right. On the HOKA Mark V, we've got 2 layers of foam. On the top, this dark foam on my colorway, we've got ProFly Plus, and that is beautifully light, it's beautifully responsive. And then the white layer on my pair of shoes is a rubberized EVA. And the ProFly Plus foam actually gets stiffer as you roll through your gait cycle, and that makes the shoe a little more responsive when you're toeing off. The same thing could be said for the air zoom unit in the forefoot of the Pegasus 39. Stand by, we're going to get to how these shoes compare on the run in just a second. But that's the midsole, so let's go down to the outsole. And on the HOKA Mark V, the outsole is the rubberized EVA. There is no outsole. The midsole is the outsole. And on the rubberized EVA on the outsole that touches the ground, we do have little ridges, although after only about 50 miles, I'm already wearing that down. With that said, I think this rubberized EVA provides an appropriate amount of grip. I can't say that I have slipped at all. I think I just expect an outsole rubber to have a little more grip than a rubberized EVA, but I don't have anything to back that up. I have found the grip on the Mark V to be just fine. But we compare that with the outsole of the Pegasus 39, and we can see we've got 2 different colors of outsole rubber. This darker blue-green rubber is carbon rubber, and that's going to stand up to a little more punishment, and that's why it's on the heel and the lateral side of the shoe. Because for a lot of us, for a lot of runners, we land on our heel and then we roll through the lateral side before rolling in and then toeing off. So that's the darker rubber, carbon rubber. Then we have a blown rubber on the forefoot. Nike has also included 2 flex grooves just to make that shoe just a little more flexible. But let's have a look at the HOKA, and I'd say the HOKA is even more flexible. But I don't know, flexibility, I don't know if that's really something I'm going to compare these 2 shoes on. But over the years, I have had a lot of experience running in the Nike Pegasus line. I had about 550 miles in my last pair of Pegasus, and they still looked pretty good. The rubberized EVA outsole on the HOKA Mark V, I can already see a little bit of wear, as I said, after only 50 miles. So I'm going to put an estimate that this shoe will probably be good for 250 miles before it gets down so low that I have to think about replacing it. So if longevity is something that you prize in a shoe, Nike Pegasus 39 wins this battle by a landslide. Pegasus 39 is going to last you a lot longer than the HOKA Mark V. I was very quick to get to the bottom of the shoe, but I want to just go upstairs for a second and look at the tongues. The HOKA Mark V has a very thin, lay flat tongue. It actually does the job. There's a little bit of padding right on the top, and there's a strip of padding that kind of runs down the middle. So when the laces are cinched tight, you're not going to have those laces biting into the top of your foot. The Nike Pegasus 39, on the other hand, has a pretty much more standard tongue. It's got a lot more padding, and that padding is throughout the entire tongue rather than just having the padding strategically placed down the middle. Now, as far as comfort goes, I've got to say that I think both these shoes are remarkably comfortable. They are a joy to put on, they're a joy to run in. However, I do have to say that even though the HOKA is more expensive, even though it's not going to last as long, that ProFly Plus midsole with a rubberized EVA just gives a beautiful soft ride. And I found that the HOKA Mark V fits my style of running a little more. That's not to say that the Nike Pegasus 39 is bad. It certainly fits my style of running. In fact, my last pair of Pegasus was the shoe I ran in the most last year. But I also have to say that given the choice between the 2 shoes, I will grab the HOKA Mark V every time. That is, until they wear out, because they will wear out a lot quicker than the Pegasus 39. So ultimately, I think you have to pick your poison. If you ask me for a recommendation, which one would I recommend? No. Let's say you ask me for a recommendation, and that recommendation is which shoe would I buy again? I would have to go with the HOKA Mark V this time. I just really like the way this shoe feels when it's on my foot and when I'm running. Oh, I did take both these shoes on the beach for a run and got them both a little wet. And obviously there's so much more material on the Pegasus 39 that these did gain a little more weight. I actually noticed them on my foot a little more when they were soaked through with water, but they felt the same and they sounded the same. The HOKA Mark V, on the other hand, like in my experience, HOKAs tend to do, once they get soaked, they start to squish a bit. And normally it takes me a good number of miles before I soak these shoes through with sweat, but naturally, as soon as I went in the water and I started running and they got soaked with seawater, they were squishing for the rest of my run. So let's wrap it up. The HOKA Mark V is a softer ride, it's a little more responsive ride, it's a lighter ride. The Nike Pegasus 39 is a little more firm, it's a little more durable, and you're definitely getting more bang for your buck with the Nike Pegasus 39 than you are with the Mark V, but I'd still choose the Mark V. Alright guys, thanks for staying all the way to the end of this video. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.